Hi, everybody. I'm going to hang on for my customary 30 seconds to make sure that um, the whole system doesn't cut out as it has been known to do in the past. Um, Such as our low tech setup here at Texas Tech. Um, but then again, I think it's probably not meant for me to be going live on Facebook, but whatever. We need to get with the time, so whatever. Um, so I want to talk a little bit about fevers today because 'tis the season for the daycare virus of the week. And before you drive your child halfway across town to see somebody, I want to make sure that everybody knows what your pediatrician is going to say before you kind of get there. Okay, fever. Temperature above 100.4 for infants. Maybe some people will say above 101 for big kids. I personally go with 100.4 because I can remember one number. Over 100.4. Over 100.4. Not 100.2, not 99.6, 100.4. Now, the thing that I hear a lot is, well, my child's temperature runs low. And I know that because most people run a body temperature somewhere between 97 and 99 degrees Fahrenheit at all times. If we're active and running around, we can push that temperature up closer to 100 sometimes. And that's normal and expected. That's acceptable to me. So even if your kid's temperature usually runs in the 97s, low 98s, it's still 100.4. That's not, your child's not unique, your child is normal, and the fever threshold doesn't change. You cannot measure a fever through the skin. So putting your hand on your kid's forehead, and that doesn't work. We have proven this in multiple studies. This does not work. It'll tell you their external temperature, but it may not as accurately tell you their internal temperature, which is really what we're attempting to measure. So if you come in and you tell me my kid has a fever and I ask you how high it is and you say, oh, he just felt warm, I'm going to write no fever in your chart. Don't tell anybody, but that's what we all do because we kind of know. Or we might write subjective fever, which is secret doctor code for mom didn't actually take the temperature. We actually have secret code for such things. So I find that people get really bent out of shape about fevers. And I would say that this is a major contributor to needless, senseless trips to the emergency department all over the United States. We are fever phobic. And it is time to become reasonable human beings about the natural course of infections and what sick kids are supposed to do. Because the problem with going to the emergency department is you go in with a kid you think is sick, you're going to come out with a kid who's really sick. Because in that waiting room with you is all kinds of RSV and flu and adenovirus and norovirus, which is that terrible puking, pooping one. Yeah. You may go in with a relatively healthy child. You may bring an infection home. And that's not a win as far as I'm concerned. Now, if your kid's really sick, that's cool. But just for a fever, let's kind of try to talk about some things that worry me a little bit more. So fevers themselves are not a problem for your child. They're not going to hurt your kid. In fact, your child's body produces the fever intentionally. It does it on purpose. The risk to your child is the infection that's causing the fever. The way this works is that viruses and bacteria multiply most effectively at a set temperature range. The ones that infect humans, typically 97 to 99 degrees. They're made for us. They've adapted to us. When we get infected, one of the ways our body tries to treat that is by driving body temperature up to make it less comfortable for bacteria and virus to multiply and keep the infection going. It's intentional. It is the way we fight infection. I generally don't worry that much about how high the fever is. So if you're hitting like 107, 108, that's where things can start to get a little weird. Some coagulation factors in your blood don't work as well. Sometimes blood sugar can go a little wonky. But in general, your child with a temperature of 103 or 104 is not at risk from the fever. They might be from the infection they have. But if all you're driving on is that number and that number scares you, we need to kind of take a step back and remember that it's most important that we look at your child and not that we treat by some random number somebody pulled out of the sky as being particularly scary. In general, fevers serve a purpose. What we know is that if we give, so do you remember, like, if any of you have some older kids, you'll remember that when they got their shots, we gave them Tylenol like before they left the office. We don't do that anymore. And the reason we don't is because when we do that, it looks, at least at this point, the science supports the idea that maybe the vaccine doesn't work as well. The vaccine only works if your body is allowed to have a normal immune response to it. And taking Tylenol or Motrin suppresses that and may make your vaccines not as effective. So let's broaden the concept. If your kid is sick and you give them Motrin or Tylenol throughout the entire infection, could you be prolonging the illness? Yeah, you could be. You could be. Hang on one second, because I don't know why my phone. Okay. No problem. I get random calls regularly. So I would say if your kid is miserable, because some kids with high fevers they're achy and they feel bad and they're not eating and they look awful, by all means treat their fever. But please don't offer medication because of a number on a thermometer. That's a terrible idea. Do not wake your child to give them Tylenol or Motrin if they're sleeping. If they're sleeping, they're fine. Let them go. See how they feel when they wake up. If they are tolerating the fever, let the fever do its job. It serves a purpose. If your child has a fever over like 105, I'd kind of like you to see a doctor. That's really high. That's kind of, you're getting into that like, something bad going to happen line. If the fever's gone on for 5 to 7 days, every day your child has a measurable fever above 100.4, remember, for 5 to 7 days. That's kind of a long time. And it is worth looking just to make sure there's nothing else happening. If your child's having severe pain, that includes ear pain, like ear infections are not an emergency, but I understand why parents go in the middle of the night to get that checked because the kids are in a lot of pain and the screaming at some point, we got to deal with it. If Motrin won't deal with their pain, take them somewhere, but please try to control their pain at home. If they're complaining of abdominal pain, doubled over in pain, they don't want to move because it hurts so much, and they have a fever, you've bought yourself a trip to the emergency room. If your kid's having trouble breathing, emergency room, okay? But if your child has a fever and it's the only thing they have, or if they have an illness that you know what it is because half the daycare's had it or your whole family has it, if they've got 101 temperature and they're runny nose and coughing, that's a cold. That is not an emergency and your child really is going to be okay. What I don't want you to do, though, is load your kid up in the car, take them to a place where other sick people hang out while their immune system is busy fighting something else, and sit there for a while marinating in whatever's going on in that waiting room. That's not in your kid's best interest. This is a terrible idea. But people do it all the time. Last thing, how do you measure a fever? So back in the day, rectal temperatures were where it's at. Not so much anymore. Now that we have decent over-the-counter thermometers that are digital, so they're quicker than that stupid mercury one that we had when I was a kid, if they can put a thermometer in their mouth and keep it under their tongue, that's fine. If not, under the arm. That axillary temperature, particularly in small kids, is as accurate as a rectal temperature, as long as the probe is under the arm, not like hanging out the back. That doesn't help. It's got to be in their armpit, and then you hold their arm down like this for a while, and you will get as accurate a temperature as a rectal temperature, but you won't perforate their rectum, which is a risk of rectal temperatures. It's not cool. Even in perfectly healthy kids, it just sometimes happens. Don't poke a hole in your kid's rectum to take their temperature under their arm. It's a lot cleaner and easier. If you've got questions about fevers, let me know. But I just want to make sure that we kind of calm down about this, what is a very normal childhood thing, and keep it in perspective. Your child's fever will be gone in a day, maybe 2, maybe 3. They don't usually last longer than 5. Your child is going to feel bad. They may not want to eat. That's okay. They have to drink. That's not negotiable. But if they're not hungry, let them be. Let their body fight the infection that they have naturally. Let their body, let their immune system do its job. That's why they have it. If your child has any warning signs, get them seen. But for those routine illnesses, honestly, the best medicine is hanging out on your couch, watching Gravity Falls or whatever godforsaken television show your kids are into, and letting their body heal. I hope you guys have a good week. I will check in with you next week and see how everyone's doing. If there's something you want me to talk about, I'm happy to. Otherwise, maybe we'll talk a little bit about colds next week because, again, 'tis the season for this sort of joy. Happy Halloween. Have fun trick-or-treating. And I will talk to you guys later.